They thought I was finished the moment they cheated me out of that deal. But what they didn't know was, I wasn't done yet. I had a plan that would change everything. And it started with buying the company from under their noses. My name's Ryan Mitchell, and for the last 10 years, I've been grinding as a business consultant in Chicago. I've built my career on trust, hard work, and an eye for spotting opportunity. When I got the chance to close what could be the biggest deal of my life, a merger that would double my firm's value overnight, I poured every ounce of energy and hope into making it happen. I wasn't just chasing a contract. This deal was my chance to prove myself, to finally show everyone that Ryan Mitchell was more than just another consultant. I stayed late nights, skipped weekends, and ran through every detail with the client and my team. I trusted the people I worked with, some I'd known for years, and I believed we were all pulling in the same direction. There was a buzz in the air when the deal was about to close. I felt alive, like everything I had done was finally paying off. My family noticed it too. My wife joked that I was married to my work these days, but I didn't mind. This was my shot, and I was ready to take it. I thought the deal was solid. Contracts signed, hands shaken, everything looked perfect. The client's team gave me their word. That's what mattered to me, honor in business. But underneath all that, there were cracks I didn't see. Little things I brushed off because I trusted them. I told myself that when you build relationships over years, you don't have to worry about betrayal. I was wrong. The closer we got to the finish line, the more I started to sense something was off. I couldn't explain it. Emails that didn't get returned, meetings canceled last minute. I tried to stay calm, but my gut twisted tighter every day. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself, Ryan, this is just stress. It's going to work out. I pictured the celebration, the new opportunities, the respect I'd earn. But deep down, I felt that creeping doubt, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning of something that would change everything. The morning I found out the deal was dead, it hit me like a punch to the gut. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at an email that didn't make any sense, words that shattered months of trust and hard work. The client had pulled out, just like that. No warning, no explanation. But it wasn't just the client backing out. It was worse. The people I trusted, the ones I thought were in my corner, had played me. I found out later they'd secretly cut side deals, hidden agreements that left me out in the cold. They had cheated me out of the deal I'd worked so hard to close. The shock came first. I felt frozen, like my mind couldn't believe what I was reading. How could they do this? How could people I'd called friends betray me so easily? The hurt was raw, deeper than I expected. I'd built everything on loyalty, on believing the best in people, and they'd ripped it all away. Anger followed close behind, a burning rage that made my hands clench into fists and my heart pound like a drum. I replayed every meeting, every call, every smile. Were they faking it all along? Was I just a pawn in their game? I wanted to scream, to shout, to make them feel the same betrayal I felt. But I swallowed it down because right then I had no idea what to do next. My confidence felt like it was crumbling, replaced by a cold numbness. I sat there for hours, staring at the phone, wondering who to call, who to trust now. The people who had sworn to help me had stabbed me in the back. I felt utterly alone. That night I told my wife everything. Her eyes filled with tears and she held my hand tight. "You'll get through this," she said softly, but I could see the worry in her face. I wasn't just losing a deal. I was losing my faith in the people around me, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. The worst part wasn't just the lost money or opportunity. It was the betrayal itself. It made me question everything. Who was I if I couldn't even protect myself from the people I trusted most? But even in that darkness, a small voice inside me whispered, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." The days after the betrayal were some of the hardest I've ever faced. Every morning I woke up hoping it was all a nightmare, that I'd find some miracle email or call saying the deal was back on. But reality was brutal. It wasn't coming. I found myself trapped in a cycle of replaying every moment, every conversation. What had I missed? Could I have done something differently? Was I just naive for trusting the people around me? Those questions gnawed at me, leaving a bitter taste I couldn't shake. I started doubting myself. If I couldn't see this coming, was I really the sharp businessman I thought I was? Was I just fooling myself all these years? The frustration felt like a heavy weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Even at work, everything felt off. I went through the motions, but without energy or focus. My team noticed. I could see the concerned looks, but I didn't want to burden them with my problems. I kept my feelings bottled up, afraid that showing weakness would only invite more trouble. At home, I tried to put on a brave face for my wife and kids. But some nights when the house was quiet, the loneliness hit me the hardest. I wasn't just grieving a lost deal. I was grieving the trust I'd given away and the betrayal that shattered it. Yet despite the pain, something started to change inside me. The sadness and self-doubt began to mix with a slow-burning anger, not just at the people who betrayed me, but at myself for letting it happen. I realized that feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to fix anything. I started thinking about what I could do next. I wasn't the kind of guy to just sit back and accept defeat. The betrayal might have knocked me down, but it hadn't broken me. If anything, it lit a fire I didn't know I had. That spark was fragile, but it was real. And deep down, I knew that I wouldn't rest until I found a way to make things right. Not just for me, but for everyone who had been hurt by this mess. So I wiped the sadness from my eyes, took a deep breath, and began to plot my comeback. The pain was still there, but now it was mixed with something new, determination. The anger inside me wasn't just a flame anymore. It was a wildfire burning through every doubt and fear. I couldn't let those people get away with what they did, not after everything I'd sacrificed. I spent nights pacing my small apartment, running through every detail of the betrayal, searching for any weakness I could exploit. I wanted justice, but not in the way most people think. I wasn't interested in lawsuits or petty revenge. I wanted to take back control, to show them that I was the one holding the cards. That's when I remembered something I'd overlooked: the company itself. The business we'd been trying to merge with wasn't untouchable. It had flaws, vulnerabilities, and most importantly, it was for sale, quietly behind the scenes. I started digging, calling contacts, asking questions under the radar. The deeper I went, the more I realized this was my chance, not just to get my deal back, but to own the whole thing. It wasn't going to be easy. I'd need money, strategy, and the guts to make a bold move. But I'd been through worse, and the betrayal had taught me one thing: if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. The thought of buying the company sent a thrill through me. It was risky, maybe reckless, but it felt like the only way to flip the script, to turn the tables on the people who thought they'd won. I started reaching out to old investors and business friends I trusted. I explained the situation carefully, no dramatic stories, just facts and a clear vision. Some were skeptical, but a few believed in me. Slowly, I began gathering the resources I needed. Every day, my plan took shape. I imagined walking into that company's offices, not as a hopeful consultant, but as the owner. The power shift was intoxicating. But I also knew I had to be smart. This wasn't just about money, it was about sending a message. I had to be calculated, precise, and unyielding. The fire inside me burned hotter with every step. This betrayal wouldn't be the end of my story. It was just the beginning of my comeback. The day I signed the papers to buy the company felt surreal. Months of planning, endless calls, and sleepless nights had led me here. I was no longer the outsider hoping to close a deal. I was now the owner, the one calling the shots. It was the boldest move of my life, and the weight of it hit me all at once. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, my hand trembling slightly as I signed the final document. It wasn't just ink on paper, it was my chance to rewrite the story, to take back everything that had been stolen from me. But with the victory came a rush of anxiety. I knew that owning the company meant more than just power. It meant responsibility. There were people counting on this business to keep running, and I had to figure out what to do next. The faces of those who betrayed me flickered in my mind, now my employees or soon-to-be former employees. I couldn't let emotions cloud my judgment, but I also couldn't ignore the pain their betrayal caused. I had to be strategic. The thrill of victory was mixed with a cold calculation. This was war, and I was ready to fight. That first evening, alone in my new office, I sat back and let the reality sink in. The quiet hum of the city outside felt different now. It was like the world had shifted, and I was finally on the winning side. I thought about my wife's words from months ago, the hope she clung to even when I was falling apart. Now I wanted to prove to her and to myself that I was stronger than any betrayal. Still, the biggest challenge was ahead. What did I do with the people who had stabbed me in the back? Could I really build a company that had been poisoned by their lies? The adrenaline and fear mixed inside me, but one thing was clear: I wasn't here to rebuild what they broke. I was here to create something new, something I controlled. I knew the next days would test me in ways I hadn't imagined. But for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. This was my move, and I was ready to play it. Walking through the front doors of the company that morning felt like stepping into enemy territory. The same halls where I'd once been an outsider were now mine to command. Every familiar face that looked my way carried a mix of surprise, suspicion, and maybe even fear. I could see it in their eyes. The people who had betrayed me knew their time was running out. I kept my expression calm, but inside a storm was brewing. This was my moment to show them I wasn't the broken man they'd left behind. I was the one in control now. I spent the first hours meeting with managers and key staff, pretending to play the part of a considerate new owner. But beneath the surface, I was gathering information. Who was loyal, who had been part of the betrayal, and who was just caught in the middle. The office felt tense, the air thick with unspoken words. People who once smiled in my direction now avoided eye contact. It was strange, almost surreal. But I reminded myself why I was here, to take back what was mine and make sure the past never repeated itself. Behind closed doors, I mapped out my plan. The betrayals weren't just personal. They threatened the future of the company itself. If I wanted to fix this, I had to start fresh, and that meant making tough decisions. Some people wouldn't like it, but I couldn't let emotion rule my choices. The satisfaction of finally owning this place was real, but it was mixed with a cold resolve. I wasn't here for revenge alone. I was here to restore order and protect the company's future. By the end of that day, I knew exactly who needed to go. The faces of those who had stabbed me in the back would soon be out of the picture. It wasn't just about firing them. It was about sending a message that betrayal had consequences. Still, even as I planned the purge, I felt a twinge of loneliness. This wasn't the way I imagined success. But sometimes, to win, you have to make hard choices. The next chapter was about to begin, and I was ready. The first wave of firings hit the company like a shockwave. Walking into that conference room, calling out names one by one, I felt a cold clarity settle over me. Each person I let go was a reminder of the betrayal, the lies, the secret deals, the way they thought they could cheat me and get away with it. Saying goodbye wasn't easy. Faces twisted with shock, anger, sometimes desperation. Some tried to argue to plead their cases, but I had made up my mind. This wasn't about forgiveness, it was about justice. The company had been poisoned by their actions, and I had to cut out the rot to save it. With every name called, a mix of emotions ran through me. Satisfaction, yes, because I was reclaiming what was mine. But also loneliness, knowing these were people I once trusted, people who had been part of my professional world for years. My team watched quietly, some relieved, others fearful. I knew this purge would shake the foundation, but I had no choice. If the company was going to survive and thrive, it had to be on new terms with new blood. Still, the weight of those decisions sat heavy on my shoulders. I couldn't help but wonder if I was becoming the very person I despised, the ruthless boss who fires without mercy. But I reminded myself, this wasn't revenge for the sake of it. It was necessary. Each fired employee was a story, a betrayal that cut deep. But also a lesson. Trust was precious, and I couldn't afford to give it lightly again. As the days passed, the office atmosphere shifted. The tension eased slightly, but a new uncertainty settled in. People were watching me, waiting to see what would come next. I knew I had to lead, not just with authority, but with vision. Despite the harshness of the purge, I felt something else rising inside me, relief almost, like a weight had been lifted. The company was no longer shackled by the past. But with victory came an unexpected emptiness. The faces gone were reminders of the cost. Success wasn't just about winning, it was about what you lose along the way. Still, I was determined. This was my company now, and I would rebuild it stronger than ever. After the purge, the office felt strangely empty, like a battlefield after the fighting stopped. The echoes of those firings lingered in every hallway and whispered behind every closed door. It wasn't just the missing faces, it was the weight of what had happened. The company I'd taken over was no longer the place I'd dreamed of running. It was scarred. I spent long hours alone in my office, the silence pressing in on me. It was in those moments I felt the true cost of what I'd done. I had taken control, yes, but at the expense of relationships and trust. I had become the person I once feared, the ruthless owner who had to make impossible decisions. My mind wrestled with questions that wouldn't go away. Had I been too harsh? Was there another way? Could I rebuild the company without burning bridges? But deep down, I knew the betrayal left me no choice. Some wounds couldn't be healed. Still, amid the doubt, I found a strange clarity. This pain was part of the price of ambition and justice. I had to accept that leadership wasn't about being liked. It was about doing what was right for the future. Slowly, new faces started to join the company. Fresh talent brought new energy, new ideas. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something new, something hopeful. I realized that rebuilding wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about creating something better. Even my old team, the ones who stood by me, began to look at me differently. I wasn't just Ryan the consultant anymore. I was Ryan the owner, the man who fought back and reshaped the company. At home, my wife saw the changes too. She told me she was proud but also worried. The line between determination and obsession was thin, and she feared I was crossing it. I promised her I'd find balance, but I wasn't sure how yet. The betrayal, the buyout, the purge, they had changed me in ways I hadn't expected. I wasn't the same man who had walked into that deal months ago. I was harder, more cautious, but also more determined. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. This company was mine, not just to run, but to protect and grow, and no one was going to cheat me out of it again. Months passed, and the company started to breathe again. New contracts came in, the staff's morale improved, and the profits began to climb. But success never felt easy. Every day was a battle to prove that I wasn't just lucky, I was worthy of the position I'd fought so hard to claim. Then, just when I thought I could breathe, the past came knocking again. One afternoon, I got a call from an old rival, the very client who had backed out of the original deal. They wanted to renegotiate, to work with the company now that I was in charge. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat in my office, phone in hand, heart racing. This was the moment I had imagined so many times, my chance to close the deal that had once been stolen from me. But this time I was no longer desperate or naive. I was cautious, calculating. I thought about everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the buyout, the purge. This was more than just a business opportunity. It was a test of who I'd become. Could I trust again? Could I open the door to those who had once hurt me? Or was it better to hold tight, protect what I'd built, and never look back? I decided to meet with them, but on my terms. The power had shifted, and I wasn't going to make the same mistakes. I was clear, firm, and unapologetic. If they wanted to work with us, they had to respect what we stood for and respect me. The negotiations were tough. Old tensions surfaced, and I had to hold my ground. But by the end, I saw something change in them, a newfound respect, maybe even a little fear. They knew I was no longer the man they could push around. Walking away from that meeting, I felt a surge of pride and relief. I hadn't just closed the deal. I'd proven to myself that I could overcome betrayal and come out stronger, that I was more than just a victim, I was a leader. The road hadn't been easy. The scars were still there, but they no longer held me back. I was ready to move forward, not as a broken man, but as someone who had taken control of his life and business. This was my victory, not just in business, but in life. Sitting in my office one quiet evening, I finally let myself breathe. The chaos of the past months, the betrayal, the buyout, the purge, the battle to reclaim my place, it all felt like a distant storm I'd survived. I looked around the company I now owned, not perfect, but alive and thriving. The faces of the new team, the projects underway, the steady hum of work, it was proof that what I built wasn't just about money or power. It was about resilience, trust rebuilt, and hard lessons learned. I thought back to the man I was before all this, the one who trusted too easily, who believed in the goodwill of others without question. That man was gone, replaced by someone sharper, tougher, but still human. I wasn't immune to pain or doubt, but I'd learned to channel those feelings into strength. At home, my wife's support had been my anchor. Together, we faced uncertainty and fear, but also hope. I promised myself to never let ambition blind me to what truly matters: family, integrity, and balance. I realized that winning wasn't about revenge or proving others wrong. It was about reclaiming my sense of self and standing tall despite everything. The road ahead would still have challenges, I knew that. But now I was ready, not because I was fearless, but because I understood what it meant to fight for what's mine and to rise after falling. This was more than a business story. It was a story about betrayal, pain, and ultimately redemption, about taking control of your destiny when everything seems lost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Because this wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the start of a new beginning.